Welcome everyone to the Kent City Council Workshop. Today is Tuesday, February 2nd, 2021. This is a remote meeting due to the COVID-19 health and safety requirements and by order of the governor. So welcome to anyone joining us on the Facebook City of Kent page, the YouTube Kent TV 21 channel, and anyone that is dialing in and listening this evening. We just have a couple items on our agenda for workshop, and we're going to get started with item number 1. I would like to welcome back Kelly Peterson to give us the quarterly sound transit update and the Federal Way link extension. So thank you, Kelly. Welcome.
Well, good afternoon, Council. It's good to be here to give you the quarterly update for the Federal Way link extension project. Next slide, please, Kim. For those members in our viewing audience today, the Federal Way Link Extension Project is a sound transit project that will extend light rail from Angle Lake Station just south of SeaTac Airport down to the city of Federal Way. The project is approximately 7.8 miles in length. It should be open for revenue service in 2024, and by 2035, it's anticipated to have over 36,000 riders. Within the project itself, there will be 3 stations and 3 garages constructed, 2 of which are located within the city of Kent. The Kent Des Moines station will be located just north of the Lowe's up on the West Hill, just off of 30th Avenue. And the second station within the city of Kent will be located at the existing Star Lake, or the former Star Lake Park and Ride, just north of 272nd and east of I-5. Next slide, please. This project is a design build project, as we've talked about before. What that means is as the project is being constructed, it's still going through the design process with different packages. So the earlier work gets reviewed and permitted first, and that's what's happened. The project is under construction now. To help manage this, Sound Transit and the contractor have divided the project up into 3 segments. You have seen this slide before. This is an update of where we are with the permitting packages. Segment 1 includes all of SeaTac, Des Moines, and that portion of Kent north of 240th. Segment 2 includes that portion of Kent from 240th south to 272nd. And segment 3 is not on here. That's all of Federal Way, so I'm not going to give you updates on that. But then with that, there's a number of corridor-wide packages that help supplement or provide information to the packages within the other segment 1 and segment 2. So in the past, we've talked to you about these different packages, and each one of these. So for example, in segment 1, S105, is a package. There could be just a few permits in there, or there could be several permits. Could be building permits, street use permits, civil permits, any type of permit that we would issue with a typical project. So we've been working on, your staff has been working on permitting for quite a while. What you see in yellow are packages that have been issued, and what you see in green are permits that we anticipate issuing over the next month or so. There's going to be a lot of changes. I want to highlight a couple of them here as far as what's coming up. The S107, that's the KDM garage. That's coming up in the very near future. The S111, that should be issued probably next week. That's all the civil work. That includes the new roads, the new sidewalks that will be the city of Kent's in the future. And then the other one I'd like to highlight is S207 and S210. That's a lot of the utility and civil work down at Star Lake. Those are real big packages or big milestones getting those out the door. One of the biggest challenges that we have right now is making sure that these packages, that when they come in, they match up between the two. That's probably the biggest challenge that we have right now today and over the next 3 or 4 months. And as we find particular conflicts or issues, we have permit revisions that we're working with the contractor and Sound Transit, and in some cases, other cities or other utilities to make sure that we have all the documents talking to one another. Next slide, please. So what's happened? This is some information that is of things that have been accomplished in the KDM station area. The dry utility work is nearly complete. That's your power, your phone, your cable. PSE power poles on the west side of 30th Avenue, they will be removed soon. Some of the wet utilities around the garage, they have been installed in anticipation for issuance of the KDM garage permits. And some of the big work that you see and where the project is finally coming out of the ground is the column construction on the west side of 30th Avenue South. And I have a few photos for you in just a second. And some of the caps on top of the columns have been constructed. And something that we'll be working with throughout the project, TESC stands for Temporary Erosion and Sediment Control. It's extremely important, helps us maintain to be consistent with the MPDS permit, and we work with the contractor on those issues on a daily basis, particularly when it's raining out like today. Next slide, please. So I'm going to show you a series of 3 slides here, and these are all taken from 30th Avenue South. They were all taken in mid-January, and these are looking to the northwest. You're going to see a progression of how the work is being completed. So these columns that you see, these were actually drilled down in the ground. They dropped the rebar cages. They pour concrete around them, and this is what they look like. 234th will be just on the other side of these columns, between the columns and the building that you see in the background. Next slide, please. As we move just a little bit further south, we can see the columns that are there with a bunch of bracing around it. This is the false work as the workers are getting the forms all ready to go to be able to pour the caps. The red and white building that you see in the background, that's called Highline Place, and Highway 99 is just on on this side of that particular building. This is the area where the Kent station will be. 236 will go right in between these 2 sets of columns here. So next slide, please. And as the caps cure, they pull the formwork off. You can see the caps that are here in place now, and these are ready to receive the girders moving on as we move forward in the construction process. So next slide, please. So as we've moved just a little bit further south, we've talked to you before about the contractor and Sound Transit removing waste from the Midway landfill. That is, for all intents and purposes, the waste removal is complete. The screening is all completed, and the barrier and backfill, that has actually been completed. They've got that installed. The contractor is now working on constructing walls adjacent to the landfill. So if you drive down I-5, if you look over, that's the work that's being completed now. They're building that wall. They'll backfill this summer. Overall, that process went really, really well. I was pretty impressed, particularly given the fact that this is a Superfund site, with how quickly everything happened. I think this will be better for the city residents in the long run as well. Next slide, please. And then we get down to the Star Lake area. Not as much work has been down there, but some clearing for the guideway has begun north of the station. Structure Z, anytime you see structure, that's where Sound Transit and the contractor are building a bridge. Structure Z happens to be that bridge over 272nd Street. The north side is the city of Kent. The south right-of-way is the city limits, and Federal Way is on the southern side. And that's important because a water line on the southern side of the southern side of the road needs to be relocated. All that work is within the city of Federal Way. It's going to take about 3 weeks, and they're working on that now. And again, erosion sediment control, a very important factor. Next slide, please. So moving forward over the next quarter, some of the work that's going to be done, a lot of the permitting, getting that major permitting completed over the next quarter. The contractor and the other utilities, they will be finishing up their utility work. I've heard that PSE is actually connecting customers from the overhead power system to the underground power system. PSE is supposed to be done approximately late February with their work out there, which is good. We will start seeing more water, sewer, and drainage being completed. In order to get the columns within 30th, there will be a sewer bypass in 2 locations that will be completed here real soon in preparation for the drilling to happen out in the road for the columns. Structure B, they'll continue to work on that, the caps on the west side, and then girders and precast panels. We'll start seeing those hopefully at the end of this first quarter. And then one of the big things that's happening, the tower crane for the Kent Des Moines garage is coming. So that's anticipated to start being assembled in early March, and then the garage construction will begin in March. So we'll start seeing a lot of changes out there. Next slide, please. So moving forward in segment 2, again, we got the permitting. The contractor starting next week, they will be drilling behind Lowe's. That's again the southern part of Structure B. So that equipment, as they've finished up in the northern part of the project, they'll be coming down and starting to work again in the city of Kent. And they average about 1 shaft a day. It's pretty impressive. Some more clearing and grading. It may not happen right away, but this quarter will happen between South 252nd, which is the southern end of the Midway landfill, to Star Lake Station. Again, we already talked about the wall construction and those packages that we've talked about as far as the civil work. We will start seeing utilities and civil work begin on our streets here very soon. So with that said, one of the issues that I keep having in the back of my mind is the Greenfield Park Homeowners Association near the Star Lake Station. They have to drive through that construction project. So one of the things that I've asked Sound Transit to do is let's get a meeting with those folks. Let's talk to them. Let's talk to them about schedule. We need to emphasize to them schedules can change, but we need to be communicating with them as much as they can. So Sound Transit anticipates that meeting happening in mid-March. We're going to have to get creative with COVID, probably do something online, something similar to this. We'll be sure to make sure that council is aware when those meetings occur, and you can sit in and listen on those if you'd like. Next slide, please. During the the last quarterly update, I promised council that I would come back to you with an update on art. And so we'll talk about some of the temporary art and some of the more permanent art. We talked about the murals. They did get installed in the Kent Station area construction fence. There's 58 of them, and Sound Transit does maintain them. Unfortunately, there has been some vandalism that has occurred. One of the things that Sound Transit has done is they've talked to the artists, some of them that live in the area, and so they're keeping an eye on it. I haven't heard of any additional vandalism. Hopefully that won't happen again, but that is something just to be aware of. Next slide, please. So now I would like to talk to you just about some more of the more permanent art features that will be a part of the project. So within the development agreement between Sound Transit and Kent, the Kent Council, for the KDM area, the theme that was identified was confluence, a weaving together of people, places, and ideas. And so Sound Transit has a selection process for the artists. Some Kent staff were a part of that. And for the KDM station, the artist that was selected is a place called Recite Studio. What they propose is a 2D design applied to the glazing. And they're working on the final scope and budget. The next slide shows a kind of a process of what they went through. So you got those three arches of the organic material, branches and sticks, creating these arches in an interesting way. So what they did is they're going to apply that to the Kent Des Moines station. So that top slide that you see there, everything that's in red, that's the glazing or the glass that will be part of the station. 236 is right in the middle, so cars can go underneath there. And that, if you work your way down the images, you can see the arc, and then where that woody debris would be on the glazing. And so to take it in, the next slide takes it in just a little bit further. And this is the one artist that is probably the most advanced in their pieces. So the big image on the left, this is the street view, and you can see the wood debris, and where there is cross sections in the wood, they've got unique and interesting artwork to tell their story. And then the bottom right image is an image that's taken that would be up on the station up above the road. So we'll just go through the next artists real quick. They aren't developed as much, but at the KDM Plaza, Sound Transit selected Michelle de la Vega. She's doing a sculpture piece. She's already reached out to the community and is getting input into the community for her piece. But it's going to be a sculpture. It's a aluminum and sculpture that's going to be up above, off the ground, that's up high. But it tells a story about family. And we will get more images from you as they're developed and bring them back to council, as well as the Art Commission. Next slide, please. And then Kent Des Moines station has 3 artists. Star Lake only has 2, but the final artist here at the KDM station is an artist named Chris Jordan. He's doing a suspended sculpture inside the foyer of the garage entry there. So where you see that image, that's going to be actually back inside that kind of open area. And we don't know what that's going to look like. There's still going to be some community engagement. We're still identifying what that's going to be, or Sound Transit is working with the artists identifying what that's going to be. And once that's identified, we'll be sure to inform council. So now we're going to go down to the Star Lake station. Similar to Kent Des Moines station, Star Lake also has a theme, and that theme is luminescence, a warm, welcoming glow at the edge of the forest. So the artist that is going to be taking a look at this, they're going to be applying artwork to the station itself, similar to the glazing, and they may also, depending on budget, the breezeway that you see underneath Star Lake there, underneath the station, may also have some artwork as well. So if we go to the next slide, this is some conceptual glass renderings that may be on the station. This is what they're looking at. They're still working through that. These are interesting, colorful, very organic, and we'll see what happens as they work through the process. And then the last piece is a familiar name. Next slide, please. Again, is Chris Jordan, and he is going to be creating a vertical piece just outside the garage. So this image that you see here is looking from 272nd Street north into the Star Lake station. The station's on the right, the garage is on the left, and that red box, that's where that vertical piece will be. So that's the update that I have for you tonight. The big takeaway is get ready. 2021 is going to be a big deal for this project. There's going to be a lot of changes. A year from now, it's going to be significantly different up there, implementing what council has adopted in the Midway sub-area plan, and I'm looking forward to seeing it. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you so much, Kelly. Councilmember Boyce, you have your hand up.
Thank you, Madam President. Hey, Kelly, good job as usual. I got a couple of questions here for you. Three questions. I give them two one at a time. Around the artwork, are any of the artists local? And then the other part of that is when you talk about the non-permanent artwork, will we have the flexibility to put artwork up to recognize where it's Black History Month or something type of stuff as the months go by?
Okay. So as far as the local artists, I do know for a fact that, Kim, if you go to the slide that has the very first artwork slide, I do know for a fact that some of those artists are local. As far as the more permanent, I don't remember off the top of my head, but I do have some bios on there on those folks. I can check on that and I can get back to council.
Okay, good. That's fine. Then my other question, you didn't talk about the schedule, the budget, or any concerns. So the budget schedule or any concern you have around this year project?
Right now, I don't have any concerns with regards to the budget. And one of the reasons why is because, as you're aware, Sound Transit is going through a realignment process where they're looking at all their projects. They're taking a look at their planned projects. This project has been authorized by the Sound Transit Board. There is a contract in place. Now, when I say I'm not worried about the budget, one of the things that Sound Transit staff is doing is they're working to control any change orders. They're trying to keep everything in place consistent with the contract.
Okay.
So I don't see, this project isn't going anywhere. This will get constructed.
Okay. Then my last question is around the security of the building. You mentioned there's been some vandalism already. So once we get that building, what does security of that building look like? Just in case there is vandalism, do we have the flexibility to be able to catch anybody who may try to vandalize the building?
So, that's an interesting question. And one of the things that we as local reviewers, whether they're from Kent or Federal Way or CTAC, one of the things that we've talked about with Sound Transit operations is some of the challenges that we've had. Graffiti is a big issue. And we've tried to minimize walls. We've tried to put fences in the right location. We've worked with Sergeant Andy Kelso during the review, giving him a chance to provide feedback. We got him in touch with Sound Transit Security so that in the design, there's certain things that happen where we're minimizing potential impacts such as that. The other thing is making sure that we have sealer, that when things come up is at Sound Transit, we're talking with Sound Transit and get them out there, their operation folks to get in and take care of any potential vandalism and other issues.
Okay. I don't think you completely answered my first question. At least I didn't hear you. So on the artwork that is not permanent, right? I mean, that means you have the flexibility of changing it every so often. So as certain things, happen on a monthly basis, whether it's Black History, LGBT, or whatever, will we have the flexibility of being able to do some artwork that will recognize those type of things?
Well, all that artwork is owned by Sound Transit, and I will check with the artist to see if they plan on rotating that out. I don't think that they do, but I can check with Sound Transit and I can get back to you.
Okay. Thank you, Madam President. And Kelly, hey, thanks again. Good job, bud.
Thank you.
Good questions. Thank you, Councilmember Boyce. Councilmember Fincher.
Thank you, Madam President. Councilmember Boyce, yes, some of those artists are local, as in Tacoma, Seattle area, so King Pierce County. There are also some from out of state. Kelly, what is TESC? One of the slides said TESC, TESC, TESC.
Yes, TESC is temporary erosion and sediment control. So as the contractor's doing work, they have a permit, a National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System permit. The city has a municipal National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System permit, and controlling erosion, making sure that we aren't getting dirt going into our stormwater system. That's something that's very important. This is a massive project, and it's a big issue on this project. We've been working very closely with the contractor to make sure that erosion stays where the soil stays where it's supposed to. We don't have erosion issues. It's a big emphasis, particularly this time of year with this type of weather.
Okay, and understanding that it's a really large project, you were talking about matching up the packages.
Yes.
So does it happen often that the packages don't match up? Have you come across major issues?
No, it's not major issues. It's just the little issues. And as one thing changes, there may be a little tweak in the other one. So we just have to go back in and make sure that these are matching up so we don't end up having a problem in the field during construction, and just making sure that everything is blending together between the packages.
Okay, and then my last question, I believe it was the last slide for the Star Lake Station showed a large rectangle for Chris Jordan sculpture.
Yes.
So are these designs pretty much to scale? So that one, obviously it's not going to go past the building. The one just there with the ovals, is it going to stretch? Are you telling us it's stretching the entire length? So for instance, that sculpture, the rectangle was almost as tall as the building. Is that going to be that size?
Kim, will you go one more slide, please? One more. So is this the one you're referring to, Councilman?
Yes.
Okay. I will check the height on that and the height of the garage, and I'll get the scale on that. I'll work with the Sound Transit art crew to get that exact dimension for you.
And I don't need the exact dimensions. I was just wondering if the boxes were giving us the size for all of the boxes and ovals, if they were giving us the approximate size of the dimensions of the art piece, the finished art piece.
These are just approximate to show the location of where it would be.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Councilmember Fincher. Moving on, Councilmember Larmer, your hand is up.
Yeah, so Kelly, I'm just curious, the temporary art, what happens to those when the fences come down, when we're done with them?
You know, I will check with Sound Transit art and I will find out.
Okay. I'm just curious if they could be used in other city projects, later on, other construction fences.
And again, these are owned right now by Sound Transit. So these are Sound Transit ownership.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Great. Anybody else have any questions or comments for Kelly? All right. Another great presentation, Kelly. And thank you so much for your flexibility. I know we pushed you out from our last workshop. So always great to see what's going on. And like you said, there's going to be a lot happening this year. So looking forward to seeing those changes.
No problem. And if any council members have questions moving forward, please let me know.
Madam President, when can we expect our next update? So that things are moving fast. I'm just curious, do you know we can expect our next update on this here?
Kelly, do you know when you'll be coming back to us with another report?
I'm sorry. It'll be quarterly. So May or June, I'll talk with Derek and we'll make sure that you guys have that.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Next up in the agenda, we have park impact fee update. So I'd like to welcome Brian Levenhagen.
All right. Thank you, Madam President and council members. It's great to be here this evening to talk about park impact fees for Kent. You remember back in December, I was here with our consultant, the FCS group, to introduce the topic of adding a park impact fee for Kent. Tonight, our consultant has completed their draft impact fee study, so it's just me kind of talking through the next steps on the project. With that, next slide. So I want to start and kind of just review a little bit, and parks, we always try to relate everything back to our park and open space plan and our planning efforts. In 2016, we adopted the park and open space plan that had 4 main goals. The first goal, quality public spaces. The second goal, performance-based approach. Again, trying to look at level of service in a different way, and that's where we developed our recreational value-based level of service. Then transformation through reinvestment. The park system that we've built over the last 20 or 30 years isn't necessarily the same park system that will serve our residents today. And then finally, sustainable funding. We had a big capital funding gap back when we did the previous plan. And obviously, without sustainable funding, you can't accomplish the first 3 goals on this list. And park impact fee, obviously, it ties into that sustainable funding piece. Next slide, please. So we've had a lot of progress made over the last 5 years since the project was. Oh, sorry, go back one slide. Oh. We've made a lot of progress since the last park and open space plan was passed. We passed a B&O square footage tax that has really helped us kind of stabilize our capital maintenance backlog. We've started to pick off items that had built up over a long period of time. We're reinvesting and maintaining our existing parks. The one thing that we didn't accomplish at that time was looking at developing new parks and making sure that all the time that we were kind of losing ground on maintaining our existing parks, Kent's population was growing, we were adding more workers. So there's new need for additional capacity in our park system. That's where a park impact fee comes in. It's not a way to supplant existing funding. It's a way to pay for growth and the impacts of growth and making sure our park system keeps up with, level service needs associated with that added capacity. Next slide, please. And again, we mentioned the park impact plan already. That plan recommended a park impact fee as a funding source for parks capital. And last year, we completed the comprehensive recreation program plan. That action plan also had creating a park impact fee as a strategy to help us move forward. Back in November, the City Park and Recreation Commission passed a motion supporting the establishment of a park impact fee. Next slide, please. The Raleigh Valley effort, the Kent Valley Industrial Subarea Plan, implementing a park impact fee would help us achieve 3 of the 4 plan goals there. We've also had significant engagement efforts throughout this process. We've reached out to King County Master Builders Associated. We had a virtual meeting. We recently sent them a fact sheet updating them on where we're at right now with a lot of the same information that I'm sharing with you tonight. And those discussions are ongoing, and we will continue to have a back and forth conversation with them as we move forward. Similarly, approach with NIOP and their government relations committee. We're waiting feedback from them, and we'll continue that conversation to make sure that they're involved in the process moving forward. And then Kent already has impact fees for traffic and fire in the 3 different school districts, and the impacts of growth on parks and our level of service are the same as those other city services. So it's important to recognize that. Next slide, please.
Councilmember Larmer, do you want to ask your question before we move on? Oh, you're muted. Sorry.
Sorry, my hand was left over from before. My apologies.
Okay. Councilmember Core, did you want to ask a question?
Yeah, Brian, can you explain what NAIOP is, please? I seem to have forgotten what that is.
So it's a group that of kind of commercial development and representatives in the region. I'm not extremely familiar with everything they do, but basically it's just a lot of the players in the region that focus on commercial development.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Brian. Well, sorry to interrupt you. We can go ahead and move on.
So last time, like I said, our FTS group was here and they went through in detail the contents of the park impact fee study. And that study is now complete. It will be amended into the comp plan with the park project list. And the park impact fee schedule is laid out on this slide as well. You can see it didn't change from our last meeting. It's still $3,281.97 per dwelling unit for single family. For multifamily, it's $2,451 per dwelling unit. And then for each different type of business, it's all based on a per square footage calculation based on the typical number of employees that would work in a building for those purposes. Next slide, please. And then kind of looking at where that puts Kent in comparison to some local jurisdictions that also have park impact fees. We are on the lower end of the scale, lower than 9 of the 11 comparable cities for single family and multifamily, and lower than all the other cities that have a commercial industrial element to them. As we discussed last time, the park impact fee is calculated based on our individual project list. And so this is the maximum allowable fee based on that calculation. The consultant has explained that it's not unusual for a city like us where we're trying to make up for a significant capital maintenance backlog to calculate a lower fee, since more of your projects are being spent on maintenance and basically renovating existing facilities and not necessarily adding capacity. But it is something that we are in a good position to look at moving forward. We're starting the update to the Park and Open Space Plan this year. And so adopting a park impact fee now would allow us to kind of get used to it and then take a really long, deep look at it through the planning process over the next year and a half. And you look at it through our outreach and with our consultants. So it would be good timing. And it's something that as we, again, having a park impact fee, it will allow us to look towards the future with that in mind as a funding source. Next slide, please. This is the park project list that I shared last time. If you remember, up to 28% of the current 6-year CIP and 31.66% of the park project list are attributable to growth, which then makes them eligible costs for park impact fee revenue. The $12 million that you see there is not actual projected revenue. That's simply the portion of our existing park project list that would be eligible to be paid for, where we would expect the actual revenue to be significantly less than that, at somewhere between $500,000 to $1 million, depending on development. Park impact fee revenue is entirely dependent on what permits come through the doors. Obviously, if things are going well, we'll have more park impact fees coming in. If they're not doing so well, we'll have less. But when you think about a park impact fee, it makes sense because really a park impact fee is to pay for growth. So if there's no growth happening, you shouldn't have to spend money on added capacity. So then if we do move forward with adopting a park impact fee, we would look to adopt the park impact fee revenue into the 6-year CIP update as part of the 2022 mid-biennial budget update. Which is the point in time where we would kind of take a look at forecasting what those revenues would be and how that would fit into our project list and go from there. Next slide, please. So the park project list and the draft impact fee study are being amended into the comp plan. It's going to Land Use and Planning Board next Monday. We're planning to take them to the Committee of the Whole on the 23rd of February and then City Council on March 2nd. And again, that comp plan amendment does not actually create a park impact fee for Kent. It's just something that needs to be in place if we do choose to go that route. And there is a time-sensitive component because we can only do one comp plan amendment per year, and there's some other things that are time-sensitive that we need to move forward on. So that's the reason for the timing on that. Next slide, please. So again, some of the park projects that would potentially benefit from having a park impact fee: Panther Lake Community Park. It's a very underserved area of the city. 25,000 residents. It'd be the first community park for that area. Some of the existing neighborhood parks are heavy in demand. So it'd be a huge win for that community to get that park built. Mill Creek, obviously, there's a lot of work going on out there, a lot of added capacity potential at that property to serve more residents. So that would be another project that we would look at. And then 4th and Willis, the roundabout is almost complete. It looks great. I drive through there every day. It's just a huge impact to just traffic flow, but there are the greenways there, so that there's a recreational value component to those greenways for the residents on each side of Willis. And then Curson Lunar Rover Park is obviously a really fun project that's going on right now. It's in design, and that could also benefit from park impact fee. Are there other questions?
Madam President?
Yes, Councilmember Boyce, followed by Councilmember Larmer.
Hey, Brian, I know some of these parts. I don't know them all. Which one? Any of these parts on the West Hill?
On this slide, no. On the next slide, yes. These are just some projects that were selected. Obviously, there's like West Fenwick is going on right now. Okay. There's some work at Lake Fenwick that will also be a part of this. So this has been a complete list.
How many parts do we have on the West Hill? I don't really know, so I probably should, but I don't.
That's a great question. So off the top of my head, between 6 and 8 or so.
Okay. Right.
Yeah, and we did do a really deep dive into level of service by region in the previous park plan. That's something we're going to pick up and do again as part of this update. And so we'll explore that in depth. And we always look at kind of geographic equity when we're planning our projects. So you'll see on the next slide, there's a couple neighborhood parks on the West Hill that are, yeah. So here you can see both Saltaire and Linda Heights, are on the West Hill here. It's hard to see when there's a big star over it. I can't recognize the parks as easily. So, I think park impact fees also, whenever we do any sort of outreach, neighborhood parks are extremely important to our residents. And as we add density and infill to our city, it is important to add capacity at some of our neighborhood parks as we work through the planning process with them. So I just wanted to kind of stress that there are a number of neighborhood parks that will benefit from park impact fees in addition to those bigger parks.
And just one follow-up question. So we got a lot of parks in Kent, which is good, right? And I think maybe in the past, I think Julie, you guys in the team looked at some parks that maybe shouldn't be parks. Where do they fit on this list? Or are there any parks that we no longer see as being part and gonna get moving to something else?
So the park project list, that really is like the cream of the crop, because it's the projects that are on our 6-year CIP. Okay. So it's not all of our parks. It's just the ones that we have projects planned for in the next 6 years. So it's system wide. We have lots of different properties. I think in the past we've had some of those discussions about what parks what the individual use of every park is. But I think one of the main goals of our new park plan update is to really look at open space and the need for open space and having a land acquisition policy. So that is something that we want to really take a hard look at through that over the next year and a half as we're doing the park plan update. It's something that we didn't get to spend as much time in the previous park plan on as we'd like. So it'll be a good opportunity to look at that.
Okay, thanks, Brian.
Yeah.
Councilmember Larmer.
Thank you. Brian, if we approve the park impact fee, when would it first be assessed for businesses?
So that is something that would be part of the ordinance. So that is not determined at this point. It would depend on when we adopt it and basically what date we would make it active.
Okay. I'm just a little concerned about businesses, adding another fee that while they're recovering from, COVID impacts. So I'd want to take a look at the timing of the non-development impact fees when we look at that further.
Councilmember Kaur.
Thank you. I think it's more for Derek that we're also looking at transportation impact fees, Derek. So what would be the timing on that? And does that, how big of a difference will it make? Like I'm in favor of park impact fees. I understand that we have a huge backlog and we need to work on our parks. It's top of the list, but I'm just trying to figure out how we're also looking at transportation impact fees at the same time.
Yeah, so yes, we're looking at transportation impact fees on a similar schedule. I think it's important to note with the transportation impact fees, we're looking more at changing the methodology, but not necessarily changing the fee amount. So I don't think we'll see a significant impact on the development community there. And with park impact fees, as I think Brian is going to get into a little bit later in the presentation, the idea is at the same time we impose the park impact fees, we change the requirement for on-site development of recreation amenities or fee-in-lieu to keep it as neutral as possible for the developer. So I can't say there won't be impacts in an upward direction, but the idea is to kind of keep things as steady as possible.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Thanks, Derek. Anybody else have any questions up to this point? All right, I don't see any hands raised, so we can go ahead and move on.
All right, next slide, please. So we went through the draft impact fee study. We have the park project list. The next step was to create a draft park impact fee code. We've put that draft together. It is being reviewed right now by ECD and legal. I think it's been well received. I think, it dovetails with a lot of our kind of citywide goals and trying to make sure that we're looking at development holistically. And so, as you guys just mentioned, the transportation impact fee is also being updated right now. I have been in contact with my colleagues over in Public Works, and we're making sure that we have consistent language between those two code sections. And so if there's updates that make sense for the transportation impact fee code, then it's something we're going to look at for the park impact fee code. When we're putting together the draft code language, we took a lot of it, the sections that were specifically relevant to parks from the Tukwila and Auburn park impact fee codes. But at the end of the day, a lot of the code language is taken directly from the RCW, and there's certain requirements that you have to have in there. And even after I drafted the initial park impact fee code draft, looking at others from around the region, there's a lot of overlap, and most of them are very similar. So next slide, please. So a few things to note in that draft code. There is a provision to have the park impact fee adjusted annually for inflation using the CCCI for our region. This is also something present in the transportation impact fee. There's a small administrative fee that would help account for the added staff time of administering this program. And I think a lot of the discussions that I've had with our ECD staff have focused around the idea that our goal with the park impact fee is to capture growth in the city when there's a significant new development that comes in, when there's a big job center that brings a lot of new people to Kent. We want to make sure that growth that then places more demand on our park system is captured, and then we get the park impact fee to pay for that. Our goal isn't to say if we have a building with 10 different tenants and one of those tenants changes over. Our goal isn't necessarily to nickel and dime every little thing that happens. So there's some code language that's used in the transportation impact fee right now that I think has really served us well over the last 10 years. It's kind of time tested. So we're going to implement that same language in the park impact fee, again, with the focus of just kind of capturing the big picture and not trying to, and even from a permitting standpoint, it's difficult to split hairs sometimes and capture every little add addition of an employee here or there. So again, this is a fee that's being imposed on new development. Yes.
Councilmember Larmer, did you have a question?
Yeah, thank you. I'm just curious, is there an opportunity for a fee reduction on like affordable units? Would that be part of the code, or would that be dealt with in a different programmatic way? If we had a large developer come in and if they were to dedicate, a percent of units towards affordable housing, is that something like we could negotiate with the park impact fee?
So I think, unfortunately, with an impact fee, it's a difficult thing to do. You have to apply it uniformly based on the number of residents or workers that are added by any given development. So
Okay.
The short answer is that you can't pick and choose when you apply the park impact fee code.
Okay, thank you.
Another element in the draft code language is there's the option of giving a developer credit when there's an opportunity for land dedication or park improvements that are part of the park plan, or more specifically the park project list that is being amended into the comp plan. So this isn't necessarily something that I think would happen very often, but it is something to kind of keep in our toolbox when the opportunity arises. If there is a development that would be around a future park project, or maybe adjacent to an existing park. So that's just something to keep in mind. There's nothing obvious to me when I look at the park project list right now, but it's a good thing to have in there. And then the park department would have 10 years to spend the park impact fees legally as allowed in the RCW. Next slide, please. So I mentioned a little bit before and mentioned in the previous workshop that really the goal is to balance the park impact fee with the existing code. The goal is to have uniform requirements for all types of development. This has kind of been something that RTD department's been working towards for a number of years. We've been working with them on a number of individual elements. So it's kind of a good opportunity to bring those all together and balance kind of the need for the on-site recreation that more serves the private need, and then the public need, which is the citywide park improvements. One example in our downtown area a number of years ago, there was a requirement put in place for private on-site recreation, and then there was a public recreation requirement that was kind of adopted as an interim code requirement. And for example, as part of the Dwell development, they paid a fee-in-lieu of fee rather than dedicating on-site public recreation. So in that case, our goal for downtown would be to take the park impact fee and have that replace that current public on-site recreation / fee-in-lieu requirement. So we're trying to balance things out where we can with the addition of the park impact fee. And then, but there are some areas like the Raleigh Valley Plan identified, that kind of capturing that for industrial and commercial uses in the valley. There's a need to add on-site recreational requirements, which did happen previously, and then kind of finishing that thought up and adding the park impact fee requirement, which will kind of, again, capture that need for private recreation, then also the public impact and the impact of the overall park system. Next slide, please. So I mentioned before about the need to kind of not place additional burden on our single family development. And so we are proposing a number of changes to the on-site recreation requirements. Currently, developers of plats 10 or more are required to dedicate and construct 450 square feet of recreational space per unit. And so what we're proposing is that for now, developers of plats 20 units or larger would be required to dedicate and construct 180 square feet of recreation space per unit, and then also pay the park impact fee. So the idea there is that the overall cost of doing 450 square feet of recreation space per unit is more or less roughly equivalent to 180 square feet of recreational space per unit plus paying the park impact fee. So we're trying to balance again the need for the private on-site recreation and then the public impact of the park system as a whole. And then also, so currently short plats under 10 lots pay a fee in lieu of providing recreation space. In the new system, plats under 20 lots would be exempt from dedicating on-site recreation or paying a fee in lieu, but they would instead pay a park impact fee. So, next slide, please. So obviously when you take the requirement from 450 square feet of on-site recreation down to 180 square feet, when you start adding that up as the developments get larger and add more units, you're not going to be able to fit as many recreational amenities. So currently, I believe it's under 25 lots, you have to have one recreational amenity. And then between 25 and 50 lots, you have to have a second recreational amenity. So we would just roughly cut that in half and have one recreational amenity, which is a tot lot or a sports court or something like that, required for up to 50 units. And then over 50 to 100, we would add an additional recreational amenity. This is mostly just a space consideration. It just, you can't fit too many things in a smaller area. And then additionally, I mentioned before that we've been talking, the Parks Department's been talking to UCD for a while about trying to just make our requirements easier and more uniform and just give developers more direction overall. So that is something that we have shared previously with King County Master Builders and then also Land Use and Planning Board. And we're trying to figure out working that, adopting those changes in coordination with the park impact fee. At least we're kind of discussing how that would work. And we're again hoping to add more clarity around recreational landscaping requirements, we've heard that the amenities that, like I said, tot lots and sports courts aren't necessarily a good fit for some developments that are focused more towards older residents. And so adding things like garden plots and things like that as options is trying to just make it more flexible and just fit more, different situations. And then throughout all these code changes, just emphasizing that we do value open green space and trails and recreation throughout everything. So next slide, please. I mentioned changes to the onsite recreation and Fee-In-Lieu a little bit. The typical use of Fee-In-Lieu at this point is for those short plats, so that the under 10 lots. That exemption is being raised to 20, so that kind of main use of Fee-In-Lieu goes away. We do want to keep Fee-In-Lieu as an option because there are really rare situations like the one in the picture here, which is the Park Place development that was built immediately adjacent to Canterbury. In a situation like this, we would still want to provide a Fee-In-Lieu option just because the park is literally right next door to the development. It just makes sense. But again, in keeping with that, the idea that we're trying to not add extra burden, I'm trying to be fair about how this is approached. Since we're reducing the amount of dedicated on-site recreation space by 60%, we would also reduce the Fee-In-Lieu amount by 60%. So again, it's a trying to make it fair and not add extra burden. But also end up with a better, result for recreation in the city at the end of the day. Next slide, please. So proposed next steps, continued outreach. We'll keep having the conversation with master builders and NIAP. So, it's been good discussion so far, but that'll keep going. We'll keep working through some of these questions with their interdepartmental review and refinement of the draft code, and obviously based on what I hear here tonight and other subsequent follow-ups. The comp plan amendment, as I mentioned previously, is moving forward. It goes to the public hearing at Land Use and Planning next Monday. There's committee of the whole on February 23rd, and then City Council on March 2nd. And then just as a proposed park impact fee ordinance schedule, this is really the fastest it could happen. There's some details that need to be worked out, even if we did decide to move forward at this schedule, but the public hearing would take place on February 22nd at Land Use and Planning. It would go to committee of the whole on March 9th and then City Council on March 16th. But again, that's entirely preliminary, just a proposal, just to kind of set a target and then we can go from there. Next slide. And that is everything. So any other additional questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Great, Brian. Thank you so much for this update. Anybody have any other questions or comments that you didn't get to ask? All right, so you will be coming to us at Committee of the Whole. You said you're going to Land Use and Planning first?
Yes, this Monday, and then we'll follow up with Committee of the Whole, and then, go from there.
Okay.
Madam Chair?
Right. Yes, go ahead, Councilmember Boyce.
And I know you probably got something to say as well, too, but I just think, where we at many years ago with our parks, and I know this has been a real issue for us, and I know Xandra, before she got on the board, she was hammering us about parks and moving our parks forward. I'm just real excited, and as well as you, Seth, when I give you credit as well, too, I'm really excited about just where we are going to be taking our parks, because parks play a major role into the city and what the city can be, right? And I think about the Tacoma Park System, what a great job they have. And I know Julie had a lot to do with that. And just to see things come into fruition for the parks in Kent, I am just really, really ecstatic about that. And I just want to say, thank Judy for her leadership. Brian, you're doing a fantastic job, and just keep the work coming. I really, really appreciate that. So good job, team.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Thanks, Councilmember Boyce. Anybody else have any last thoughts or comments? All right. Thank you so much, Brian. We will look forward to having you at committee on the 23rd.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
All right. Looks like we got through those presentations fairly quickly. So, council members, that gives you a little bit more time to take a break in between now and our council meeting at 7 o'clock. So, go enjoy this time that you have, and I will see everyone back here at 7. We are adjourned.